Okay, it is that time again. It seems like that last Steelbook update video that I did proved to be quite successful. An awful lot of you guys liked it and gave good responses to it. And I have plenty of more Steelbooks to show off. And instead of just going with just the general route of just showing what else I've picked up, I decided to make this a bit more of a thematic episode of Steelbook updates or updates to my Steelbook collection. This time, we're going to be centering on video game steelbooks specifically, either those that get bundled in for either pre-ordering a game or coming in with a collector's edition, what have you. And after carefully assessing the amount of video game steelbooks that I actually do own, I was actually pretty surprised to learn that I have quite a few of them, enough that this is probably going to warrant a split into two videos. So this is going to be part one, part two will come later down the line. So for now, I'm just going to center on this particular batch. So let's get started. First up is what I consider to be probably the weakest out of all the steelbooks that I have in this first batch of video game steelbooks, is the Mass Effect Andromeda steelbook, because it quite literally is the same thing as the generic artwork of the Mass Effect Andromeda video game box. Like any version of the game that you buy, whether it be on PC, Xbox, PlayStation 4, the artwork is the same, and it looks like they just took the same artwork and replicated it onto the steelbook. The inside artwork is actually pretty neat, with the background of the planet and your version of Ryder there kind of in the foreground, but other than that, they really didn't do much to give us some really cool artwork to display inside of the steelbook, except for what you see right here with the helmet kind of modeling for the planet, the Mass Effect Andromeda logo, and not much to really go for on the back except more galaxy. And it's also a little bit of a shame that I took too long to remove the UPC code down at the bottom, that the adhesive kind of stuck to it very harshly. This came out back in 2017, so this thing is stock on there for good measure. Then kind of keeping in line within that section of the video game generation of last year's or last gen's consoles, we got Batman Arkham Knight, the Steelbook edition that comes with the collector's edition that also comes with the statue and plenty of other little goodies. But the Steelbooks are always one of my highlights when getting a collector's edition of a game, and I actually do really like the Batman Arkham Knight one because they have the alternate artwork right there that you've seen in other promotional material, but this time they used it. That's very much different from what you get in the original standard edition video game box art. So we have Batman brooding as he generally does, and then on the back we have a slight cutout of, or at least a section of the Batmobile that kind of proceeds from the front with him kind of standing in front of it. What I also find kind of neat is that this is one of the earlier steelbooks that I acquired that happens to have a glossy finish as opposed to a matte finish, so I thought that was pretty neat. And then on the inside you get a little bit of his armor and a little bit of the Batmobile wheel, as well as a couple of little goodies. So this, because of the glossiness and the reflective patterning that's going on, it feels much more metallic, much more like a steelbook. And it, what other character to give it a proper, armor-like kind of feel than with the Dark Knight himself. Here's one that I initially wasn't a huge fan of, but I kind of warmed up to it over the years. Dishonored II, another steelbook that came with the collector's edition that also comes with a, unfortunately, non-wearable mask, but also with a couple little other trinkets and stuff, because I knew I had to commemorate Dishonored 2, and it's a good thing I did, because since then, the Dishonored franchise has been put on ice. This is made by Arcane Studios, and I really love the Dishonored franchise. I really hope that they bring it back to some capacity, and I'm definitely looking forward to their next outing, which is going to be Deathloop in May for the PlayStation 5, so I'm looking forward to playing that. But here we have the steelbook that came with that Dishonored 2 CE, and again, when I first kind of took it out of the box, I thought it was just a little bit too much on the simple side, because it just has artwork of Emily Caldwin there at the front wearing her mask in that vigilante kind of state. But when you flip it, you actually have the mask of Corvo, the protagonist from the first game, donning the back portion of the steelbook with the Dishonored 2 logo on the spine, and then you have artwork of both Corvo and Emily ruling at the throne there inside of the steelbook itself. So as time went on, I actually did start to appreciate a little bit more of the simplicity of the steelbook, especially when you take into consideration that even though it's got the matte finish, it does have portions of that lenticular kind of paint jobs going on with her eyes and the mask, where when you shine in the light, it looks like it's got like a reflective coating. I'm always appreciative of that sort of stuff. And I also dig the simplicity and the duality of the steelbook itself, with Emily on one side and Corvo on the other, because it's also emblematic of how you can play the sequel in the first place. And keeping a similar kind of aesthetic alive with this steelbook is the Uncharted 4 steelbook for the collector's edition as well, and kind of replicates that same sort of style where you have different kind of paint jobs and things going on with the detailing. But what separates this different from the Dishonored ones, the Dishonored one was using very much artwork from the game, you know, official promo art. Here they made an exclusive piece of art for the steelbook that I'm a huge fan of, because it does have that comic book kind of aesthetic, but they kept that kind of lenticular reflective paint job alive with the matte finish. And this is honestly one of my favorite steelbooks, even though I feel like the logo on both the front and the spine could be a little bigger as far as sizing. I really dig what they did with the actual cover. I actually prefer this over the original, somewhat generic box art that you have for Uncharted 4 when it was initially released. And then on the back you have a cage with a pirate skeleton there, kind of just blasting in the wind, and it just, you know, it kind of sells the mood and the tone they're going for it here in the Thieves' End, and I really dig what they did here. It's just a shame that on the inside there's really not much going, you know, else for the spine aside from, you know, a little bit of artwork going on right there. But besides that, this is genuinely one of my highlights of my steelbook video game collection. Now here's another one that it's not a humongous deal. This is one of those freebies that Best Buy was throwing in when you pre-ordered Prey back in 2017, which is a somewhat underrated game. I honestly don't get the flack behind that game that some people have kind of put forward to it. But one really interesting dynamic about this particular steelbook is that it has artwork here of the protagonist, Morgan Yu, but what's interesting is that on one side you have the male version, but when you flip it vertically, not horizontally but vertically, you have pretty much the exact same artwork, only this time it's showcasing the female version of Morgan Yu, which actually can use the same exact name. Now personally, I played the game as female Morgan Yu because the voice work I found to be a little bit more compelling, but besides that, I like that it sells on the mechanic that you can choose your gender of the protagonist, and it also kind of adds a different perspective of how some supporting characters and how the story can kind of unfold when you take into consideration how you play the game in that style. And definitely an overlooked game if you have a chance to play it, whether it be through some kind of subscription service or if it's on sale or whatever. And if you're a fan of survival horror, Prey is actually a little underrated in my opinion, and you should check it out. In the steelbook, it's a nice little addition. Could have done without it, but I'm glad that it's here. Now this next one's actually gonna hurt just a tiny bit because it is in fact for my Game of the Year 2018, Spider-Man. Insomniacs Spider-Man to be specific. And this is actually a steelbook that joined my collection very late in the game, because when I first bought the game back in September of 2018, I actually got the standard edition, because at that point the collector's edition was completely sold out. But then it was like 1 or 2 months after I had beaten the game that I was so enamored with the game itself that I just took a chance, went online, and I found the collector's edition was actually back in stock. I don't know if it was maybe returned. Likely it was returned, because I rebought it through Best Buy, and when it was delivered, the box itself wasn't exactly in the most pristine condition. All the contents inside, including the steelbook, were just fine, but the corners were kind of warped, and something tells me somebody returned it. They weren't happy with it, they probably had it in their house, being tossed about, changed their mind about it, and returned it before the return policy was up. But one man's loss was another collector's gain, and therefore I ended up with the steelbook that comes in that collector's edition. Now, unfortunately, could have done better on the steelbook itself, because even though I appreciate the simplicity of the spider symbol here at the front with the white on red, can you not do anything else with either the back or even the spine? There's not even a logo or the name of the game on the spine. It's just all red except for the front. Very reminiscent of that special edition PS4 Pro that I missed out on, so that's cool to see that I have a little piece of something like that to kind of, you know, to kind of commemorate that Spider-Man game. But they could have taken some broader opportunities with something on the back, or, you know, at least the Insomniac logo. At least on the bright side, on the inside, when you go and crack it open, you do see that compelling and charismatic image of Spider-Man posing for the camera, waiting for you inside. Okay, so for this next one, I'm going to be rewinding the clock a few years, because it's gonna then tie in to the present time in a somewhat segue-ish kind of way. But we're harkening back to 2013, during the PlayStation 3 era. In fact, the very end of the PlayStation 3 era, when one of the most acclaimed video games of all time was released, I mean, love it or hate it, it's gonna have its staple in video game history, and that is The Last of Us. This is the Steelbook that not only came with the collector's edition at the time, but the edition that I ended up going with, because I was a little short on money at that time, was the special edition, the one that just came with the comic book, the art book, the very hefty hardcover art book, as well as, of course, one of my weaknesses, the Steelbook. And I actually really dig the Steelbook because of its simplicity, as opposed to the simplicity that was a little too much on the Spider-Man Steelbook edition. But here, I actually do like the monochromatic angle they took with the artwork of Ellie here at the front, and then when you flip it, you actually have Joel waiting for us there. And I like a little bit of the, I don't know what the word is called, but when they use like dots to form the image, I don't know what the proper word is for that kind of technique of graphic design, but they kind of went with that along with the black and white, and then you have the Last of Us logo there at the bottom of the corner, Last of Us on the spine, and then waiting for you on the inside when you crack it open, you actually have the artwork of the main box art of the standard edition of the game, only without the characters. Since you already have them on the covers, they kind of did away with them, and they kind of set us like a good little background there to put the discs and the other stuff that comes with this edition waiting for us inside. So that's pretty cool. So it only made sense that along with the original Last of Us, the Steelbook for Last of Us Part 2 was gonna come into play, because who could have known what kind of game was waiting for us when we had pre-ordered the collector's edition for Part 2 right there. Now, I didn't go full blown, I didn't go all the way with the Ellie Edition that came with that Goodwill backpack, but I did settle for the one that came with the statue, a couple of other little goodies, patches, stickers, as well as the Steelbook. And this time they didn't go exactly with the monochromatic look like they did with the original, but rather they still kept the theme of having a duality sense of portraits on either side of the Steelbook. This time we have an older Ellie gracing the front there, which I gotta be honest, as beautiful on a technical level the artwork for this is, it's just VR. Does that not look like Ellie? It looks more like it looks more like that girl. I can't remember her name, but she was in The Walking Dead. I'll show a picture of her here, but she was in The Walking Dead at one point. Yeah, I just think that the resemblance to Ellie is not 100% there. What is, however, is the resemblance to Abby on the back side of the Steelbook. So some of you may have conflicting thoughts on the Steelbook itself. I think it's actually not a bad composition, and I actually do think that the artwork for Abby here on the back is a little bit more accurate for the one on Ellie on the front. Could be symbolic of the content of the game itself, but that's just one man's opinion. Anyways, you got Last of Us right there at the front. Not much really going on in the inside, except for what seems to be like a canvas texture kind of aesthetic going on there with the inside. So it's not as dynamic as the one for the original, but it's still an interesting Steelbook. I like the glossy finish as opposed to the matte to kind of I guess you could say contradict the two different styles of those two particular games. And again, whether or not it's a good or a bad thing, it's all entirely up to you. Then we have a very lucky instance where I actually got two Steelbooks for one particular game. And that's because not only was there being a Steelbook thrown in by default with the collector's edition that I have down here, but I also got a bonus Steelbook for pre-ordering the game through Best Buy, and that's for one of my highlights of last year, Doom Eternal. Now, this one first is the Steelbook that came inside of the collector's edition, and it comes in a matte finish, and I really dig the artwork on the front specifically because I like the very I like how the Doom guy, the Doom Marine there, is kind of displayed in a very, you know, it's something that you would see in a cathedral, only maybe more so a cathedral from hell, to kind of warn the demons of the doom that awaits them instead from our main man right here. So it's really cool artwork designed. I can't remember who the artist, I think it might have even been Mondo, but I might be completely wrong about that. And I even like a little bit of the artwork that's going on in the back with the tentacles and the portrayal of hell with the different enemies that you're going to be facing. What I do think it's a little bit of a wasted opportunity is that when you crack it open, you virtually have the exact same artwork only in black and white. So they didn't really take any more chances on the inside. They really just kind of copy and pasted, and they just did the black and white thing. Okay, but they could have done a little bit better, especially since this is the version of the Steelbook that comes when you pay an extra, like damn near $200 for that collector's edition that came with the helmet and all that stuff. You know, a little bit of extra, premium, but that's just a nitpick. What I really like, actually, a little bit better, is strangely enough the Steelbook that was thrown in at least, with a pre-order of the game at Best Buy. And this is the Steelbook from a company I think called Scanavo, something like that. And not only does this sport a gloss finish as opposed to the matte from the first one, but this also kind of gives you completely different artwork than the one that came with the collector's edition, because they took their chances. Not only do you get the artwork from the, I think it's called the Ultimate Edition of the game, that's like $20 extra, that comes with the Season Pass and a couple of other downloadable goodies, but on the back you have even more artwork of hell and different kinds of enemies coming for you there. You got the very small Doom Eternal logo there on the spine, not just for this Steelbook, but also for both practically. However, when you crack it open, you get the artwork of the original Standard Edition Doom Eternal box art. So it's cool that you kind of get everything all in one. Especially if you did end up doing what I did here, which is not only pre-ordering the game, but also pre-ordering the collector's edition at Best Buy. You get 2 Steelbooks for the price of 1, and it's cool that I can kind of interchange the game in between 2 different cases, and you got, the gift of choice. We're coming down to the wire, and we have another one here that was included in the deluxe edition of this particular game, and that's for Final Fantasy VII Remake. Now, it's always awesome. I am just gonna say right now, I don't care who you are an MVP in my book if you go ahead and throw in the Steelbook with the original Standard Edition Blu-ray case for the game, which is something that Square Enix is actually really consistent with. They did it with Kingdom Hearts 3, and they did it again with Final Fantasy VII, where they threw in the standard blue PS4 case with the original artwork, and then on the side, you got the Steelbook. So you have a matter of choice right there and then. And here in the Steelbook, instead of Cloud, we have Sephiroth, the big baddie Sephiroth, gracing the cover there, surrounded by flames with Midgar kind of toppling over there in the background, kind of foreshadowing of things to come with a glossy finish. And then on the back, you have the Final Fantasy VII Remake logo, only with a little bit of that lenticular kind of paint job going on right there that reflects in the light. When you crack it open, you do have, however, that very iconic artwork of Cloud overlooking the tower from the center of Midgar, ready to take on whatever waits him. And since we're now transcending into the period of time where games are becoming even bigger and much more expansive, those are going to come on 2 discs. This is actually one of the first Steelbooks that have been added to my collection that can contain 2 discs instead of just 1. So, new era is upon us. And to also kind of keep that going, only except for maybe not the results that we were all expecting, is Cyberpunk 2077. For those of you who have been watching my videos for quite some time now, you know that I did manage to actually get the collector's edition of Cyberpunk 2077, because at the time, that was one of the games that I looked at and said, that looks like a beefy boy. And I actually really do like the artwork that they kind of gave us here to kind of give us a sense of what Night City is all about, with the graffiti, the metallic cover. You also see a little bit of that yellow paneling from some of the buildings you do come across within the city, and you get little subtle hints as to different gangs and different areas of the game itself, whether it be the territories that the gangs control, like the Valentinos, or the different cars that you get to acquire. So if you look really closely, you can kind of see a little bit of that graffiti artwork foreshadow that. So it's kind of interesting to see that. And also the Cyberpunk logo followed by just a simple 77. It's a little different than just your traditional logo. So it's a bit of a bummer that that traditional logo then just gets used on a general yellow backdrop. The very feared yellow backdrop from Twitter is used as your artwork for when you crack open the case and you look inside. So they could have done something a little bit better, maybe like a vista, a sunset view of Night City. That would have been my preference, but that's essentially all that you really get, is that Cyberpunk logo there on the inside, along with, again, 2 sections to house the 2 different discs that you need to use now to install the game. Just waiting on that patch. Still waiting on that patch though. Ghost of Tsushima. And this is a very interesting one, because if you look at my background, you'll notice that I actually do have the collector's edition of Ghost of Tsushima that I managed to acquire through very lucky circumstances, because at the time it was sold out, but it just happened to be returned at a Best Buy in my local area, and through sources and research, I was able to track it down and buy it. However, this is the Steelbook that also comes in that edition, but also came with the special edition that you could have bought separately just for $10 on top of the standard edition, where they not only threw in a very cool sleeve, cardboard sleeve that has the traditional artwork of the game, but when you look inside, you then get the Steelbook with a very cool matte finish, and also it does kind of lean more so towards a simple aesthetic of the artwork that you get on the Steelbook, but there's just something so Sucker Punch-like about the blue on black. Maybe it's reminiscent of Sly Cooper, I don't know, maybe I'm just looking too much into it, but I really do like the somewhat manga, it looks like a manga cover, to be honest, and it's appropriate because it is, kind of reminiscent of that Japanese culture, and I like what they're kind of doing there with Jin there wearing the mask, taking up the sword with the Ghost of Tsushima logo both on the front and the spine, and then waiting for us on the back is the Sucker Punch logo. So really cool little Steelbook that houses my game of the year. Interesting that it only comes on one disc, and then waiting for us on the inside is a very simple yet really compelling and very serene looking artwork, or pattern rather, of the leaves. You can kind of see kind of trailing in the horizon on the Tsushima island from the game. So very cool Steelbook. I really can't speak too much bad about it, but it's definitely one of my favorites, part of the collection, especially because this is in fact one of my favorite games of the past generation, and one that I look forward to, whether it be through DLC content added to the original game, or the sequel that's eventually going to be coming to PlayStation 5, or I dare say, the graceful cheeks of Jin Sakai in live action with that movie. And that does it for my Steelbooks for standard consoles. What is actually something that I wasn't really expecting for them to do, and yet over the course of the past couple of years since the console's release, are Nintendo Switch Steelbooks for some of those games. Even though they don't come on disc, the cartridge can still manage to fit in very cool, neat, well tight and packed Steelbook editions for some of those Switch games. And I happen to have a couple of them right here. First off, with the Steelbook that came, if you were lucky to come across it, for Let's Go Pikachu and Eevee. This is a commemorative Steelbook that came with either edition of the game, and on the front you have Eevee ready to attack right there, and then on the back you actually have Pikachu. So this can go with either version of the game. You can flip it back and forth, except when you open it there's a very definitive front and back, so technically speaking Eevee's on the front, Pikachu's on the back. I don't understand why Pikachu gets the balloons, but I guess that's just the thing that they went there, because they're trying to encompass as many of the elements that Pokemon use as possible. You can kind of see a little bit of the lightning, the earth, leaf, water, dark material, wind, and then with Pikachu you see a little bit more of the water, and I guess balloons are supposed to be air, I don't, or flying. I kind of don't understand the correlation, but waiting inside are two very lightly colored yet still very cute portraits of Eevee and Pikachu in yellow and orange. So this goes with any version of the game that you have, and it's cool that they were throwing it in at different retailers. I believe it was more so of a Best Buy exclusive, but it's a very nice metallic Steelbook that genuinely looks like a Steelbook, in a very cool addition to not only the Switch collection but also the Steelbook collection. Fortunately, going back to simplicity is not always the best policy. You have the Steelbook that came with the ultimate, well, not so much, I can't call it ultimate, but the special edition of Smash Bros. Ultimate back in December 2018. And the reason why I say simplicity is not always the best policy is because, as just like with the Spider-Man one here, you have this Steelbook for that Smash Ultimate that has the Smash symbol there in the front, made to look like the sun, very reminiscent of that original teaser trailer of Smash Ultimate when it was first unveiled. However, that's quite literally it. It's on a black backdrop. There's literally nothing on the spine, nothing on the back. To be fair, when you do open it, you get a cool little look at the battlefield stage from the game there in the inside. I personally would have liked a little bit of a panel or something really cool and dynamic to go in with the roster of the game because of how huge and iconic it was. But more so to the point, Nintendo, come on, do something with the back, do something with the spine, be creative, because with a iconic game like Smash Ultimate, it kind of, you know, begets just as iconic Steelbook. And to close not only the Switch Steelbooks off, but also this video as a whole, is actually the newest addition to my Steelbooks that literally just came out recently for one of the games of 2021, Monster Hunter Rise. It was a free Steelbook from the company Scanavo thrown in with your copy of the game at Best Buy. Now, again, going to, you know, kind of cutting some corners here, the artwork itself is not badly composed, and I again love the use of the lenticular kind of reflective paint job going on the front and the back, kind of giving it like that holographic look whenever you know, kind of, you know, change it or move it around the light, and it reflects the light in a very dynamic way. Awesome, I dig it. What I don't dig is that essentially they just took the artwork from the deluxe edition of the game that's only $10 more and used it as their Steelbook. You know, I would have appreciated maybe something different, a different composition, different piece of artwork to kind of give us something cool to look at on the Steelbook, because essentially, especially for those of you who did get the deluxe version of this game and they threw in the Steelbook, you essentially got two versions of the same artwork, only one in the standard Switch casing and then another in the Steelbook. So some bigger and broader chances could have been taken there. And don't even get me started on the inside. There's literally nothing on the inside. It's a black background. Okay, I at least like that they kept the name on the spine, but again, Nintendo, just like with Smash Ultimate, take chances. You know, these things cost $20 by themselves, according to the websites. Take chances to give us something give us something that we're looking forward to at least buying separately. Should we not be able to buy it at, you know, the original game, and we only want the Steelbook or something? Gotta make it worthwhile. And that's gonna have to do it for now. Like I said, I actually do have quite a few more Steelbooks, not only for video games, but also for movies, even TV shows that I have yet to cover in future videos. There's even some video game Steelbooks that are still packed up, whether they are still wrapped in the cellophane or inside of their respective boxes. Case in point, I actually have the God of War Collector's Edition right behind me here that I haven't even opened. And there's a Steelbook in there just waiting to be, you know, taken out. So give me some time to kind of get my things in order, get another Steelbook update underway for you guys, whether it be covering just more standard standalone Steelbooks that I've acquired over the past couple of months, or sets that could be coming out. There's one in particular that I'm waiting to debut in June that I'm desperately trying to get my hands on. So if you guys want to see those Steelbook updates in the future, don't forget to subscribe, turn on notifications. I also stream over on Twitch. The link is in the description if you guys want to go and check that out. I might actually be live right now. And I appreciate you guys for watching. If you guys want to show your support even further, the Patreon link is down below if you guys want to be a contributor, or as I like to call them, executive producer on the videos, and your guys' names can show up in the credits of all future video essays that are going to be coming very, very soon. Otherwise, guys, take care, stay safe, and stay humble. See you later.